NFL training camp guide, and his notes on the Titans are quite interesting. We'll get to Sheil coming up next. And, of course, we welcome your participation on Zone TV or otherwise, Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. We welcome you always. You guys are always there to make our show better with your commentary, your opinions throughout the course of the day. So I think we need to start, though, with what happened yesterday after practice concluded. What happened yesterday was that Rashaan Evans and defensive coordinator Shane Bowen were at the podium. And the focal point of this training camp, and really of this season, the biggest storyline of this season will be, can the defense that they've put back together, deconstructed, then reconstructed throughout the course of the offseason, can they find a way to take strides forward? This is something that they have been tasked with both on the side of personnel, with the way that they've retooled basically half the defense, and on the part of the coaching. Be it Mike Vrabel as the head coach, who comes from a defensive background, be it Shane Bowen, who has come up under Vrabel at multiple stops, Ohio State, Houston, and now here in Tennessee. The commentary, shocking is not the right word. Shocking is dramatic. But transparency, really a little less than a year, about 8 months after this whole debacle went down, with who is really in charge of that side of the football, who is calling the plays, who is responsible for the third down defense. Why is the defense struggling across nearly every facet other than the turnover differential that we see them coach so regularly and so often out here on the practice field? Who was being assigned the most blame? Well, people looked at the defensive play caller, who in his first year, in the middle of a COVID offseason, was Shane Bowen, and said, well, it must be this man. It must be that Mike Vrabel and his continued boys club, and I'm speaking from the voice of Titans Twitter now. Perhaps I should do the accent, or should I not? Should I avoid that, Lucas? How are you this morning, by the way?
I'm great, feeling good. How are you?
I'm okay. I don't know. Have we really found a voice that we like for Titans Twitter? Because I don't want to do the faux redneck thing. Like I don't think that's fair to our audience. Our audience is better than that, so I should treat them better than that. But I don't think we've found a necessary voice for me to kind of personify what my Twitter mentions look like on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it's a fine line. Write it carefully.
Thank you. That's all your worldly advice. Hey, go get him, bud.
Yeah, I got nothing on this one. I truly have no idea.
Just a pat on the butt and send me out there. Anyway, so speaking for Titans Twitter, with guys like Jadeveon Clowney and Jonathan Joseph, and for all the good works that he did, David Quessenberry, this has been an allegation that's not only been lobbed towards Mike Vrabel, but John Robinson as well, where they bring in a bunch of guys from their previous stops, whether that be former Patriots or, in the case of Vrabel, former Houston Texans. And I think that's something that people neglect to understand, that's what's done across the league. You bring in guys that you know, guys that you're familiar with, guys that have worked well under you previously. That's the MO for every coaching staff and every front office in the NFL right now. That's not exclusive to Vrabel or Robinson. But I think the majority of the people looked at Shane Bowen like, okay, this is a Vrabel lackey that he's bringing along, and why should it be to the detriment of the Titans defense when our offense is out here scoring 30 points per game, north of 30 points per game? How could we waste this opportunity as Titans fans, as an organization, and see this squandered with a defense that was historically bad? And Shane Bowen became the face of that thing throughout the course of the season. Now, it didn't help that when we asked Mike about this, whether this was his intent or not, it took on a life of its own, where he's telling us, I can't remember if it was at the end of the season or at the end of the regular season, where essentially, or in the year-end press conference when we're talking about the title of Shane Bowen or lack thereof in 2020, and he's essentially telling us, yeah, you guys are getting too caught up in titles. No, no, there has to be definition. There has to be defined roles. If not, people like us are going to nitpick it to death until you tell us what's going on, until we are provided a reasonable explanation. Not for our purposes. I mean, yes, for our purposes to understand how to cover this team better, but for the purposes of the fans who demand answers as to why their defense sucks out loud. Just a degree of transparency on this. And I understand that you are trying, if you are Mike Vrabel and you're somebody in his position, you're trying to protect your players, you're trying to protect your coaching staff. But I think in not giving out designated titles in 2020, it allowed this thing to spiral out of control in a way that made Shane Bowen the fall guy, rightly or wrongly. And so when Rashaan Evans, inside linebacker for the Tennessee Titans, is at the podium yesterday, and we're asking him if he noticed any discernible differences in Shane Bowen. Now as their official DC, no longer burdened with coaching the outside linebackers as well as calling the plays. This is somebody who's free to move about, to make his presence known, and to get to know the rest of the players on defense. This is what Rashaan Evans had to say.
It's almost like having a new offensive coordinator with a quarterback, man. You get better and better, and you get comfortable. You talk more and more. You have more time with a guy like that, and the more and more time that you have with him, the better you become. And I feel like we're slowly doing that even now, just with camp. I'm pretty sure you guys have seen just the energy and just doing those little things, man. That's really what it's about right now in camp, just working on those little things so that when the big lights come on, we'll be able to play fast.
The comfort level is so critical because it sounds like they were inherently uncomfortable last year. It sounds like these guys didn't really know the person who was responsible for bringing them together, for coordinating, literally, the definition of the job. The person who was responsible for literally coordinating the defense was having a difficult time because in his first year as a play caller, they went to an all-virtual offseason for the most part. When they come back, the meeting rooms are no longer meeting rooms. They're meeting Zooms, and the style of teaching has to adapt. Then you get diagnosed with COVID-19 yourself at the end of September to where you are further isolated from your team. And it sounds like all of these things accumulated in a way that caused this defense to snowball. There are plenty of reasons why the Titans defense struggled last year, and this does not alleviate any kind of responsibility from any of these guys. Football guys are so loath to make excuses, but when the one thing that hovers over everything is literally a situation that we had almost no precedent for, a global pandemic just dropping in the middle of a football offseason and changing how you do business, I'm more inclined to look at you a little differently. This is why I've been saying, people have been pissed off at me for what they believe to be a defensive Shane Bowen that is unwarranted. But there was no way that everything that went to hell on the Titans defense last year was solely that man's fault. You could hear it from the players. You can hear it from Bowen himself when he's standing at the podium yesterday. And I believe it was, I can't remember who asked the question before Steve Lehman. Well, why don't we just go to Steve Lehman's questions about how big a difference Shane Bowen feels that it's made to be the defensive coordinator in title officially this year.
Yes, absolutely. I do. I think it's helped. I think just with everybody, with the coaching staff, with the players, I think it's been good up to this point. They kind of understand where the buck stops, and it is what it is. So I'm excited the ways these guys are going about working right now and kind of what we're trying to get accomplished on defense.
It just makes all the difference in the world because the players know who their definitive voice is. And Shane Bowen is saying he absolutely thinks it makes all the difference. That on top of what he went on to say yesterday, which was that he's able to move around freely from room to room. Now, of course, there are still COVID limitations that provide for an uncommon situation. But imagine calling the plays for a defense who the guys on the defense you don't really know. Shane Bowen not having to be the dedicated outside linebackers coach on top of play calling duties, turns out makes his life a lot easier. This was him yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I've been able to bounce around meeting rooms. You guys heard it a lot last year, like the coordination, the communication, making sure everybody's on the same page, right? And now I can immediately walk in the linebacker room and say, hey, right? So everybody sees things the same ways. We're communicating things the same way. So I think that's been a tremendous asset, being able to bounce room to room. Also being able to understand and make sure, like, we're getting coached what we want coached, right? Like, that's part of it. Like, I want to make sure they're hearing what we want, and then when we go in the unit room, they better be able to spit it back, and I know they got that covered, right? And then obviously out in the field, just being able to touch all those guys. But I think building the relationship with the guys, like that's a big part of it. That last year I don't think was there, where I think this year it's growing, and that's becoming a bigger piece for me.
I'm telling you, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me that this was allowed to fester for so long last season. And it's something that's going to be continue to be a running theme of this offseason until they can prove, and I guess it's no longer the offseason, it's training camp, but until they can prove to us otherwise, this is going to continue to be the analysis of that group. We'll come back and talk about it with Sheil Kapadia of The Athletic, their excellent NFL coverage. He's written the playbook for the 2021 season, everything you need to know about every team coming into training camp. We'll get his thoughts on the Tennessee Titans live here from St. Thomas Sports St. Thomas Sports Park at training camp, presented by our friends at Two Rivers Ford.
J. Martin Ramon, getting ready to eat some Titans credit pie.
How do you think the credit pie goes over the last 2 years for the Tennessee Titans? How does the pie get divvied up?
J. Martin Ramon, Jason Martin and Ramon Foster. Tomorrow morning starting at 6 on 104.5 The Zone.
Beautiful weather out here. I've got actual football in front of me. There's helmets and shoulder pads. There's fully padded practices. It's a beautiful sight.
Absolutely. I think that's happening around the league. You get the little taste when they start training camp, and now the pads come on, and pretty soon we'll be talking preseason and go from there. So it's a great time of year, no doubt about it.
Well, it's a particularly great time of year because the playbook that you do each and every year preseason, or at least in the training camp portion of the season, is available now. Well worth your subscription at theathletic.com. Shield does a comprehensive deep dive on all 32 NFL teams. I want to start locally, of course, here, Shield, because you wrote that the Titans have the feel of a boom or bust team. If you could expand on the audience, or for the audience, a little bit on that.
Yeah, I think it's probably more likely to be boom than bust. But, they obviously made big moves in the offseason, specifically with acquiring Julio Jones. And everybody in the AFC is chasing the Chiefs right now, and there are different theories on how you do that. Do you try to build up your secondary so that you could slow down Patrick Mahomes? Do you build up your offense so that you can just keep pace with Kansas City and hope that you can go up and down the field on them? And, I think with Tennessee, the thing that stood out is that a lot of this comes down to that change at offensive coordinator. If a lot of what we've seen over the last 2 years was truly Arthur Smith being a brilliant schemer, a brilliant game planner, then they are a team who you could see kind of taking a step back this year. However, if a lot of it was the talent and Todd Downing's going to take the approach of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, well, man, you have one of the top 5 most efficient offenses in the NFL that just added Julio Jones. And even if he doesn't play all 16 games, what a weapon that's going to be specifically if you're talking about high-leverage situations and playoff games. So I just think they're a really interesting team this year.
Different kind of energy, certainly a different kind of energy out here at Titans training camp in a way we are unaccustomed to, just because of the presence of that one player alone. But what kind of difference? Because you reference a lot DVOA and EPA per play in the playbook. Now I get the Football Outsiders Almanac every year preseason, but if you could expand for the audience on what exactly those terms mean and why it's important to be in the positive in those particular metrics.
Yeah, these are just kind of efficiency statistics, and football stats can be tricky. If you look at it like a 6-yard gain on 4th and 7, well, that's a failure, right? You're giving the other team the ball, but a 6-yard gain on 3rd and 5, well, that's great. You're extending your drive. You got a first down. So, a lot of times if you look at the traditional box scores and total yards per game, those things don't tell the whole story. You need to dig a little bit deeper, and thankfully with some of these sites, like you mentioned, Football Outsiders, we're able to do that. And none of them are perfect, and it's always a combination of different things, but they just put some of the stats you see into better context. And when you look at the Titans stats specifically, since Ryan Tannehill became the starter a couple of years ago, I think they've been the most efficient offense in the NFL, which I think would surprise some people. Everyone knows they've been good, but when you look at some of the advanced stats, they've really been elite. And so really, if you look at kind of the big picture in the NFL right now, my view is if you could build an efficient offense, that's the thing that's sustainable year over year, which we see. The great offenses, they stay great unless they suffer terrible injury luck, whereas defense can be a little bit more volatile. So, just talking to people around the league, GMs, other people, a lot of them do sort of agree with that take. They think if we can get the quarterback situation right, if we can get the offense right, a lot of the other things we can kind of figure out. And so I think Tennessee has a leg up on a lot of teams right there.
So with the addition of Julio, it's fair to assume, maybe assumptions are not the best things to be doing on a regular basis, but certainly in training camp, that's what a lot of people are doing in terms of roster manipulations and how each offense or each defense is going to change from year to year. But it's fair to assume that the amount of snaps that the Titans run in 11 personnel will probably go up from the second fewest in the sport last year with the addition of Julio Jones and understanding what their tight end group looks like right now, correct?
I think so, yeah. I think when you look at it, losing Jonnu Smith there in free agency, are they really going to lean on those 2 tight end sets as much that 12 personnel. I'm sure they'll still mix it in. Who knows? They might still be among the league leaders, but I just think they have more flexibility to use those 3 receiver sets. Obviously, you're going to have Julio and A.J. Brown on the field, and then Josh Reynolds or somebody else emerges there at wide receiver. You will have a little bit more flexibility. Now, they're going to have to decide with Julio Jones, 32 years old, how to kind of, manage his snaps a little bit. It's not the NBA. It's not load management where guys are going to sit down on certain weeks, but, there could be situations where you say, all right, he's going to play, 65% of the snaps this week. We don't need him out there on every snap. If he's not feeling great, it might turn out that he does feel great, and you feel like you can use him a little bit more. So I think some of that personnel usage will be dependent on how much they want to keep Julio Jones out there on the field.
Sheil Kapadia of The Athletic is here with us on 104.5 The Zone, author of the playbook that you can find at theathletic.com/NFL playbook. Well worth your subscription as well as all of the great journalism being done at theathletic.com. Defensively, of course, is the thing that it didn't ultimately lose them their final game, the postseason game, the wild card round against the Baltimore Ravens here in Nashville. It was the offense that fell short. Good game planning by the Ravens defense to find a way to neutralize Derrick Henry in a way that not many defenses did last year and make Ryan Tannehill try to beat them. Now, of course, 29th in overall defense. The only thing that was their redeeming quality as a unit was that they were tops in turnover differential. Historically bad on third down conversions allowed. Where do you see them? I mean, I think the easy answer is to say that their third down percentage can't be as bad as it was a year ago. It would be almost impossible for it to be as bad as it was a year ago or worse. But where do you see them taking the biggest step forward as a group, Sheil, with the pieces that they've added?
I look at their pass rush, and you look at it on paper, and, by doing this playbook, I have the exercise of going through every team's roster, and I look at it with Bud Dupree, Danico Autry, who, in my opinion, is a very underrated veteran who can line up in multiple spots and really be a handful for opposing offensive linemen. You look at Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry. To me, on third down or passing situations, whether it's a 2-minute drill, whether you're just facing a pass-heavy offense, that's a pretty formidable 4-man pass rush unit. And so I think that's an area where they could be a little bit better, or maybe a lot better, than they were a year ago. Now, certainly they have some questions there in the secondary, and we'll see how that cornerback situation shakes out. But you are right that the third down thing, usually that's not something that just carries over year. Like you're not just terrible on third down one year, and then that's a guarantee that you're going to be that way the next year. That stuff sort of regresses to the mean a little bit more. That's one of those things you can certainly look at. And, I don't know what type of role Jim Schwartz is having down there in kind of his senior defensive advisor or defensive assistant role. But if you just look at his track record, he's usually able to muster mediocre, competent defenses even when the talent is not outstanding. So I thought that was an interesting addition for the Titans there in the offseason. Because let's be honest, they don't need an elite defense, right? No one's expecting them to come out and have a top-5 defense. That's not how their bread is buttered, so to speak. They need to have an elite offense and kind of a mediocre defense. You know what? That's a formula that a lot of teams use to make pretty deep playoff runs, and I think that would be the Titans' formula for success in 2021.
I can tell you I'm watching Schwartz on the practice field right now, and he is at this point, it seems, a quality control coach without the paycheck of a quality control coach. It's a much different situation here in Tennessee. It's interesting, though, to see what kind of concepts that Schwartz is going to be able to help them incorporate into a defense that they already try to make sure they have as much multiplicity as humanly possible. I know that's pretty common across the league, but certainly something that Vrabel here in Nashville values, to try and create matchups on defense and improve their pass rush in that way. I think the biggest focal point for Titans fans here in Tennessee, Sheil, is Jeffrey Simmons and exactly how good of a player on the interior defensive line he can be. He gets talked about with Aaron Donald, and he's in all of these top 10 lists that we see throughout the course of the offseason. He does have that potential, but I guess what are NFL talent evaluators, what are people looking at when they see Jeffrey Simmons and project that kind of greatness? Because understanding he was the most double-teamed defensive lineman in the sport last year, we are still waiting for him to take that substantial step.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, what you mentioned, right, is the two things there. One is being double-teamed, a lot of the attention on him last year. And then the second thing is what you mentioned with Schwartz there and the matchups. You know, Schwartz had a guy in Fletcher Cox in Philadelphia, and a lot of what their game planning would be was how can we create one-on-one matchups for our best player, Fletcher Cox. You know, maybe that means walking down an off-ball linebacker like a Jayon Brown, where the center says, all right, I can't help on Jeffrey Simmons because this guy might be coming up and blitzing. I have to account for him. Maybe it might be moving the front, where you kind of have to have three defensive linemen on one side of the center and one on the other to kind of create those one-on-one matchups. So there are different things that I think certainly Schwartz will bring there. And I think Jeffrey Simmons, like you mentioned, he's one of those young players, talented players, where you're kind of waiting. Like there is another level we all think he can get to, but it's a matter of kind of fulfilling that potential and getting there. And, I do think he has more help this year, and I do think there's a chance that maybe he could be kind of a sleeper player who has a monster year.
Sheil Kapati of The Athletic is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. The Indianapolis Colts, what the hell?
Yeah, right? I mean, could the first week of training camp go any worse?
Really it's so bad.
That just made those monster moves. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, the Quentin Nelson thing comes up yesterday. So now it's not only your quarterback, it's really one of your best players, your best offensive linemen, and he could miss some time. So, certainly, I had the Titans, I think, winning the division when I wrote this playbook a few weeks ago. But, man, it only cements my take there now where you see what's happened with the Colts since then.
Now, you spent a great deal of time covering the Eagles, and I remember talking to you after Wentz got traded to Indianapolis and into the Titans division here in the AFC South. Are the things that were bothering Wentz before the latest injury and the idea that he's going to have foot surgery now, or has had the foot surgery, the bone removed from his foot, with the time span of a 5 to 12 week potential return, which made Mike Vrabel laugh at the podium the other day here at Titans camp. Did you go into this seeing what Carson Wentz was last year and think that he was salvageable as a player? Because I couldn't talk myself into it before, Sheil, and now with this latest injury, I don't know how it's possible.
Yeah, I think, my take on Wentz was when you look at sort of the stages of his career the last 4 years, 2017, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. 2020, he's one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. But I look at those two middle years, 2018 and 2019, where I think, if you're looking at it objectively, you would probably say he was kind of in that 10 to 15 range. He had some weeks where he was outstanding. He still had fumbling issues. He still was a little bit erratic with his accuracy. And those are things that I'm not sure can be fixed. But I think when you take the whole package, I thought that going to Indianapolis with a coach that he knows, that he trusts, with a coach in Frank Reich who knows Wentz's strengths and weaknesses so well, I thought he could be in that range where you would see him be, maybe around the 13th or 14th best starter statistically in Indianapolis. So I didn't think he was going to lift them to another level where all of a sudden they're Super Bowl contenders. At the same time, I do think last year a lot of things were working against him, and he played so poorly that I'm not sure that's the guy we're going to see in the future. But now when you look at this injury, in my experience, Carson Wentz doesn't have sort of a second way to play where, he has an injury and he says, all right, I can adjust and play this kind of way. He kind of plays the way he does regardless, regardless of the situation. He feels like he can always escape pressure. He can always make those second reaction plays. And I just feel like that's going to be very difficult for a guy who's coming off that foot surgery, like you mentioned, and he's going to be pressing a bit. And, I think things are going to be tough for Indianapolis this year.
One more for you on the way out the door, Sheil. Outside of the playbook for the 2021 season that you can find at theathletic.com, Sheil also has 1 to 32 rankings of every NFL offense and defense. I'm curious your thoughts on the Los Angeles Chargers, not just because they're ranked one spot ahead of the Tennessee Titans, the 5th best offense, according to your article here. I do a podcast every Wednesday with Greg Cosell from NFL Films, and he's just gotten back from Chargers camp, and Greg was all but drooling over Justin Herbert and the things that he had seen out there in LA. What most intrigues you about this offense with Justin Herbert in year 2?
Yeah, I just think sometimes you watch a player and you throw the statistics out the window and you're just like, this guy is incredible. And I thought just the way Herbert stepped in there last year after Tyrod Taylor as a weird pregame injection thing, Herbert comes in, and like after that game and the next game, I'm going, this guy's like one of the 5 most exciting quarterbacks in the NFL to watch. And what really stood out to me and why I'm bullish on them this year is I think if you look at it, he wasn't getting any favors from the team last year. I didn't think the coaching was terrible. The in-game management, they ran the ball, I thought, way more than they should have when they had such a talented quarterback there with the Chargers. And the offensive line was one of the worst in the NFL. The run game was one of the worst in the NFL. So, I see it's pretty easy for me to envision a scenario where the coaching is better. They went out, they improved their offensive line this offseason, and if they get Austin Eckler back healthy, the running game's going to be a lot better. So, I know Chargers fans are kind of tired of hearing it. It feels like they're sort of the media darling every summer. And
every year, Sheil. Every year.
I just want to hold them and tell them, they can't hurt you anymore. You have a transcendent quarterback. Let's just put some bubble wrap on his knees or whatever we have to do. And I think they're going to be a pretty good team this year. I think I have them winning 11 games this year.
TheAthletic.com/NFL playbook is where you can find Sheil Kapadia's work for this training camp season. Get smarter about every NFL team there at TheAthletic.com. At Sheil Kapadia is where you can follow him. Thanks so much for the time as always, buddy. It was good to catch up.
All right, good talking to you, Buck. Take care.
Sheil Kapadia of The Athletic here on 104.5 The Zone. We're getting tweets. The praise is pouring in on social media about what Sheil had to say. Let's see. Tim, the Titans fan, dude from The Athletic on with Buck Reising, just used the word elite to describe our offense. As a long time fan, this brings a tear to my eye. I'm sure many people feel that way. We will continue the conversation about this Titans offense and defense coming up next. I'm Buck Reising. Oh, and the dumbest thing in sports this week. I forgot it was a Wednesday. Things are moving way too fast for me out here, Lucas. So we're doing the dumbest thing in sports this week next?
Correct.
Okay. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. 615-737-1045. Give us the dumbest thing in sports this week live from Titans training camp. It could be what Shane Bowen had to say and the way that the Titans defense was handled. Perhaps that is the dumbest thing in sports this week. Find out next.
Hi, this is Dr. Lewis. Are you struggling with erectile dysfunction and sick of taking pills? Well, we finally have a medical breakthrough that is helping thousands of couples restore normal intimacy in the bedroom. We use the most advanced form of wave therapy, clinically proven to repair blood vessels and increase blood flow. We can now effectively treat the root cause problem of erectile dysfunction. Our technology
zone. 615-737-1045 is the number that you dial. 615-737-1045. Lucas has come prepared. I have come prepared. The callers are already weighing in. 615-737-1045 to give us the dumbest thing in sports this week. And you can't make it me. That's the easy one. That's the layup. That's the only thing that I ask. Let's start with Jeremy in Nashville, who has a nominee. No, Jeremy, in fact, wants to talk about what should have been the dumbest thing in sports this week, but we already went after Jason Martin for today. Hello, Jeremy. How are you?
You had to say it was the dumbest thing. Hey, after hearing the guy say the Titans offense is elite, I was going to put you on the hot seat. You ready to jump on board with the prediction the Titans win the Super Bowl?
Hell no. It's August 4th. I refuse. And it's nothing. Listen, Jeremy, I think that they are so well equipped, but this is like asking for a record prediction before this team has played a preseason snap. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not about the prediction. It's not about the time. I mean, it's about the timing as much as it is anything. And like when we do things like record predictions and Super Bowl picks at this time of year, it doesn't mean anything. You know, I asked Jason Martin yesterday because we had him on. He said the thing on his show, J. Martin Ramon, 6 to 10 a.m., right before this one starts. He said the thing yesterday, and we had him on to talk about the thing. And I said, what the hell are you talking about? 6 days of training camp, not even through the sixth day of training camp. Now is the time you declare that the Titans will win the Super Bowl in 2021. Or I guess technically 2022. I want, if I'm going to say something like that, I want it to mean more than just an August 3rd prediction. And that's not me being overly critical of Jason Martin. It's just the difference between how Jason does his job and how I do my job. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What are you whispering in my ear? Can you not say it on the air? Oh, he's scared now. What's wrong, Lucas? Oh, yeah, let's do the dumbest thing in sports this week.
Let's be honest. You've already seen something this week that made you say,
What the is this?
That's bullshit.
What the hell? Give me some more now.
something so mind-numbingly idiotic that you just want to get it off your chest.
Dumber than a second coat of paint.
Some idiot. You are really dumb. For real.
It's the dumbest thing in sports this week on the Buck Reising Show.
Sure is. 615-737-1045. 615-737-1045 is how you nominate the dumbest thing in sports this week. I'd make it Jason Martin's Super Bowl prediction, but we did that yesterday. So we start anew, a fresh slate. Should we go to the calls first, Lucas? I don't want to keep the callers waiting since we have an abbreviated time. Let's try Ryan in Kentucky, who's got the dumbest thing in sports this week before Lucas and I get into it. What's up, Ryan?
What's up, Buck? How you doing?
Man, I'm great, buddy.
So the dumbest thing in sports this week, I was tuning in to NFL Network. It's Training Camp Live. It's all the live insight for all the training camps. And, you know, they have the projected starters for each team. On the defensive side of the ball for the Titans, they had Woodrow Hamilton starting over Tart, for one.
Okay.
And two, they had Amani Hooker not starting, but Dane Cruikshank instead. And I have no disrespect for Dane. No disrespect.
Now, wait, Ryan, were you the person who DM'd this to me on the A to Z Sports Instagram page?
Oh, I DM'd it to you, yes, sir.
I knew this sounded familiar. No, it's spot on. This is, okay, because I love my friend Mike Giardi of the NFL Network, right? He was on the show, what was that, Monday? And Giardi, while he was here in Nashville, he tweeted out a video of Ryan Tannehill throwing a pass to Julio Jones. Except it was not Julio Jones, because Giardi forgot that Julio Jones in Tennessee wears 2, and that number 11 in two-tone blue is, in fact, A.J. Brown. I'm not mad at Giardi about it. I made fun of him on social media because I called him a fraud, and he's my friend, and I can do that, and he knows that I'm kidding with him. Because Julio Jones is still signing his name, Julio Jones number 11, because he's trying to get used to number 2 as well. So I can't totally pile on Giardi's head. But like, you know, the training camp live thing is silly. And it's why it's not that you can't follow national coverage of your local teams. There are people out there that know about the Titans.
We just had one.
Sheil is great. He understands the roster. How many people, and Jayon Brown is mainstream to you and me, of course, but how many people covering all 32 NFL teams would know that Jayon Brown is the inside linebacker for the Tennessee Titans? Not a ton. That's why we're pretty selective about the kind of national people that we bring on the show, because Giardi comes here and he covers Titans practice. Diana Rossini comes here and she covers Titans practice. She has sources here in Tennessee. People like Sheil Kapadia or Cynthia Freeland, who we've had on from the national outlets. They understand and know this team and the roster, its strengths and its weaknesses. But get the hell out of here with Training Camp Live. Like, Dan Cruikshank is a fine special teams player. Amani Hooker has been one of the stars of training camp so far. Now, that does not mean that he's immediately entrenched in a starting role, but it would take being here every day for the last 6 days, going on 7, to know that, yeah, Amani Hooker started in place of Kenny Vaccaro when Kenny Vaccaro missed a couple of games last year with illnesses that were not disclosed. It wasn't COVID, but he had this like strange illness because Amani Hooker started that game against the Ravens. He got the game-sealing interception against Lamar Jackson before Derrick Henry took it for 26 yards in overtime to end that game in Baltimore during the regular season. So yeah, the stuff you see on Training Camp Live, there's a good percentage of it that's going to be the dumbest thing you see in sports this week. 615-737-1045. It just doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything to me. Lucas, what's your dumbest thing in sports?
So the U.S. men's national team defeated Mexico in the Gold Cup final Sunday night. We talked about this on the show on Monday. This is from KCRA News in Sacramento, California, following that Gold Cup victory.
Faced Mexico in the Gold Cup final last night in Las Vegas inside of the sold-out Allegiant Stadium. That's the home of the Raiders. During the 117th minute in extra time, Miles Robinson puts a head on it, and it's your game winner. Watch it one more time. Kellen Acosta is out of bounds, about to kick it in. It goes to the right. Miles Robinson gets through the traffic, gets enough for the header. Team USA. And the crowd goes wild. USA wins the 2021 Soccer World Cup, defeating Mexico in the final 1-0. They don't make the Olympics, but they do make the World Cup final, and they win the darn.
It's a win, man.
There you go, baby. It's a win.
Thank you, Del.
You got it.
All right.
They don't make the Olympics, but they win the Soccer World Cup.
How pissed were you? Like, be honest with me, because every time I say 1-0, you correct me and say, no, you could just say 1-0. Or when I call it a pitch instead of the field, you say, no, it's okay. You don't have to acquiesce to the demands of the soccer fans. But then you watch this. How pissed were you? Be honest with me.
I was annoyed. I mean, and we talked about it on the National Soccer Show last night. Will Bowling said Sacramento's way too big a market for this type of thing to happen. There's a lot wrong there. First of all, he says Kellen Acosta out of bounds, about to kick it in. I don't know what that means. Kellen Acosta standing over a ball on a free kick where he delivered it. Miles Robinson got the header, but out of bounds, that was one thing. And then he said Gold Cup in the beginning. There's a screen behind him with the graphic that says Gold Cup.
Yep.
And he says the Soccer World Cup. They won the darn thing.
It means the same thing to him. He doesn't know the difference.
I know. I understand. But that is my dumbest thing in sports this week.
615-737-1045. I just imagine Lucas finding local news clips from Sacramento, California, and shaking his fist at people getting the Gold Cup and the World Cup confused.
It would be like if Indiana won the Gator Bowl and a reporter said, Indiana wins the college football playoff. They win the darn thing.
They win the whole darn thing. I hate the idea of local newscasters saying darn on national television, like anybody under the age of 85 says darn.
Yeah, a few cliches in there, and the crowd goes wild.
And boom goes the dynamite. 615-737-1045. We will get your dumbest thing in sports this week. When we come back, I will give you mine as well. Don't forget that Titans tackle Kendall Lamm will join us at 11:15 live from training camp, where we are currently broadcasting, presented by our friends at Two Rivers Ford. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
The 3HL gets realistic.
I'm gonna be realistic.
You're gonna be realistic.
I'm gonna
it's
be
not
realistic.
the word slave.
9 out of 10. The energy is in the building. The energy is out here on the street. When you feel this, you play for a different reason.
The 3HL with Brent Doherty, Don Davenport, and Ron Slay. This afternoon starting at 3, 104.5 The Zone.
Zika here with you for the next 2 hours. Titans right tackle. Will he be the starter? Will he be the backup? Kendall Lamm, in the midst of a training camp competition, will join us coming up next. They are going through the motions at the end of practice right now at St. Thomas Sports Park. We look forward to catching up with Kendall. I'm honestly, this is the one interview that it's not Julio Jones, it's not Ryan Tannehill, it's not A.J. Brown. Kendall Lamm is the interview that I lobbied hardest for because the man is an exceptional speaker. He has the gift of gab. And so I'm looking forward to the big man sitting down with us here at St. Thomas Sports Park coming up next. It's going to be a fun one, so make sure you stick around. And we'll get you updated on training camp competitions and who's going to start at right tackle, things of that nature, the important stuff as well. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved, because right now, before Kendall Lamm joins us, we're doing the dumbest thing in sports this week. 615-737-1045 is how you let it be known. We have had nominees for the Gold Cup being called the World Cup. Now, apparently somebody in the comments on YouTube on Zone TV knows this anchor in Sacramento and was very saying that basically this is on brand for him. So apparently he is a repeat offender, Lucas. I'm not sure if that makes you feel better or worse.
Well, he's actually a former, according to this YouTuber in the chat, it's Del Rogers, former Green Bay Packer running back.
Did you know that before you Googled it?
No, not before I Googled him. I'm looking at his Wikipedia now. Played for the Packers and Niners in the 80s, was a Super Bowl champion for the Niners in 1988.
I'm on to you. You just rattled that off like that was something you knew off the top of your head.
I'm not pretending like I knew that. I'm literally reading right off his Wikipedia page. But yes, that is him at KCRA Sports in Sacramento. Do better, Del.
What did Luke Worsham call the kicking situation?
A charade.
The great charade. That is what Lucas Panzica is doing behind the glass with his knowledge of Del Rogers as former Green Bay Packers running back. 615-737-1045. Charlie leads us off to start this hour with his dumbest thing in sports this week. I'll give you mine here shortly. What's up, Charlie?
Well, I feel like I'm dumb even reporting this, but reported last night on the Yankees baseball game, there's a company in Baltimore, Maryland that has developed all the mascot baseball caps. The mascots are upside down. And the only mascot that looks good, according to the source, was the Baltimore Orioles. So it's probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard of, but it might make a lot of money. I'm just wanting you to know it was on your show first. That's all I can tell you.
Thank you, Charlie, for that exclusive here on the Buck Reising Show. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. I saw a highlight. I can't remember. It was on SportsCenter this morning. Something happened at that Yankees-Orioles game that caught the attention of the national news media. I don't exactly. Do you know what I'm talking about, Lucas?
No, I generally try to just not watch or pay attention to baseball.
Okay, very good. Thank you. As we're trying to make soccer fans feel at home, you're just immediately excluding the entirety of the baseball viewing public or listening public. You jerk. 615-737-1045. What's the dumbest thing in sports this week? All right, the horn has sounded, so Titans practice, it seems, is ending a little early again today. Scheduled to wrap up at 11:15. Now, this is what's being reported because they're on the field furthest away from me right now, but Paul Kaharski has reported that Brady Breeze was tossed from practice for a hit to the head of Des Fitzpatrick on an end zone throw. So this actually falls in line with my dumbest thing in sports this week. The dumbest thing in sports this week is a similar situation that took place in Carolina. Now, his name is JT. It's either eBay or iBay. Safety JT eBay. I'll go with that. Yesterday was kicked out of practice for a hit that led to wide receiver Keith Kirkwood being carted off the field and taken away in an ambulance. Now, I'm not sure. Will Bowling and Christian have just walked back over to the setup here on at the St. Thomas Sports Park campus. So Brady Breeze got tossed today for a hit to the head on Des Fitzpatrick. I saw Kaharski's tweet at the end of practice. All right, Will didn't see it, but I haven't seen any medical professionals in the same way that apparently sounds like the Carolina Panthers had. So a situation that is not ideal. That is not ideal. But for Keith Kirkwood, he was carted off the field and taken away into an ambulance. He was attempting to catch a tip ball when he was hit high by eBay, who signed with the team back in April. Practice was delayed about 12 minutes before resuming. This is from The Athletic, by the way. After Kirkwood, who was able to move his arms and legs, I add parenthetically, thank God, was taken off the practice field. This kind of stuff is so unacceptable, so beyond unacceptable. And I listen, I understand that practice, undrafted rookie free agents and guys who are trying to find their way onto a practice squad, guys who are trying to make an impression, and they get too excited, they overcompensate, they're diving around and trying to make plays on the practice field when the thing that is paramount at this time of year is the health of your football team. To take a headshot at what amounts to a defenseless wide receiver trying to catch a tip pass during training camp is completely unacceptable. This is the dumbest thing in sports this week, as far as I'm concerned. Apparently, Matt Rule, who's the Panthers head coach, called it completely unacceptable. This was before they ended up cutting him, but they ended up cutting him the same day that he committed this hit to the head that saw Keith Kirkwood being carted off the field and taken away in an ambulance. These kind of hits, these kind of stunts during training camp, that's the dumbest thing in sports this week. It's just unacceptable.
Be interesting to hear Vrabel comment on it later on today.
Yeah, Mike Vrabel will be at the podium shortly after. Who are the players at the podium today? Do we know that yet?
I haven't seen that. On TennesseeTitans.com, it just says Vrabel at 11:30.
Okay, so we will hear from the head coach, Kendall Lamm, Titans offensive lineman, free agent acquisition. He will join us as well. The offensive line currently meeting at midfield as practice day number 7 has concluded out here at St. Thomas Sports Park. 615-737-1045 is how you nominate the dumbest thing in sports this week. We also put it to a poll on Twitter at Buck Reising is where you can find some of the responses. Lucas, what are the people saying is the dumbest thing in sports this week on Twitter, where you can, of course, vote on all of the polls that we put out throughout the course of the day. I know it drives people crazy, but that's how we get the content, baby.
So one person put in a graphic asking who would win in a fight, LeBron James with 2 years of training or Mike Tyson in his prime.
Good. Where is that? Is that from Undisputed? That sounds like a very undisputed topic.
John Miller submitted it. It's from a Twitter called @DunkTopic.
Oh, good.
And that topic's a real slam dunk. LeBron James with 2 years
what
of
a
training.
bad pun by you, by the way.
I think
Shame on you.
Well, I think that's the point of the Twitter.
I don't. I rebuke that in the name of Jesus.
Adam Bernhardt says Indianapolis feet is the dumbest thing in sports this week. That's
Indianapolis feet. Yeah, it's a tough scene.
Feet. That's tough.
That's the Quentin Nelson having the same injury.
That's crazy.
Is so bizarre.
A day later.
I mean, there was like you have no idea what happened. You have no idea what took place at these practices. It's not like we're out there to see, but like. If it happens to two different players, do you approach the training or the field care? What's the proper term that I'm like the grounds crew? That's the word that I'm looking for. Do you approach the grounds crew and be like, "Hey, what the hell? What's happening to our guys out here?"
With Wentz, it was something that Frank Reich said had been nagging him since high school. That he's just finally getting the surgery on.
Good.
Right. So I don't know what went down with Quentin Nelson. Matt Parker says that Phillip Rivers hasn't ruled out returning to the NFL. If he comes back, it's for one reason: to get away from the kids. Stay in high school coaching. Don't embarrass yourself.
That's right. Phillip Rivers is contemplating. He's not contemplating a return, but Sam Farmer of the LA Times had talked to Phillip Rivers, who's now coaching high school football in Alabama, and he said that he is open to a return, which just made my heart soar.
If a team needs him, is what he said.
Well, turns out his former team, the Indianapolis Colts, could use a little Phillip Rivers in their life.
Wade Swearingen says NBA contracts for mediocre players as the LA Lakers sign just every NBA player that exists.
Yeah, the Russell Westbrook. I almost Moses Moody'd it. The Russell Westbrook trade to the Lakers makes zero sense to me. Like, I don't understand. They need more shooting around LeBron and Anthony Davis, so instead they get the least efficient point guard in the history of the sport from three. 0 sense. Matt Moon on YouTube writes in, where you can hang out with the show on Zone TV. Dumbest thing in sports is a radio host live on the air flipping the bird to another reporter. Yes, I did that. Zone TV, where you can hang out with us and maybe I'll flip you the bird. When we come back, Kendall Lamm, Titans offensive tackle, will join us live here at training camp. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
It's about performance.
I think that's me being the athlete because I was always based off of my performance is how I get paid. To me, anybody in the industry of coaching is about your performance as a coach.
Blaine Bishop and Mickey Ryan. Blaine and Mickey. This afternoon, 1 to 3 on 104.5 The Zone.
Hi guys, are you struggling with erectile dysfunction? Well, today
Zoom call with you.
Cool.
Because you have the gift of gab.
Okay.
That is a rare, not a rare thing among football players. You got a lot of personalities on this team.
I try to show it.
But any time I can get just a little more personality out of you guys, it makes my day. So when I heard your first media availability out here
right.
with everybody else, I was telling you before we started the segment that I feel like I'm missing out. And this, apparently, that our producer Lucas was able to capture is what I missed out on.
Okay.
I mean, not to say this, but this is year 7 for me. You know, I've played swing. I've had to go in at a pinch out right, going at a pinch out left. 4th year in Houston, somebody got hurt, had to play right the rest of the season. I mean, whatever happens, happens. I mean, this is a crazy game. I mean, excuse my language, it happens. That's just what it is. So, I mean, at the drop of a dime, you got to be prepared. And, you know, for me, we got a long camp ahead. So whatever comes, whatever spot I get, whatever role I've defined now, it'll come. But I don't necessarily, you know, try to put too much on the plate. I mean, right now I'm going to be focused on talking to y'all as soon as I go in there, taking a nice, then going to get the cold tub and keeping it moving. So just being frank with you.
How'd that go for you?
It was nice, you know. Just to be quite frank, after practice, you know, we work for about 2 hours. Then going in there, I call it my Zen time. I sit on the toilet, have a good time, then keep it moving. So
no doubt. Literally keep it moving.
Right.
Zen time is important.
Exactly.
No, man. I heard that, and it's not rare that we get transparency, that we get to see a little more of you guys.
Right.
But, like, Ryan Tannehill is one of the brightest individuals that I've ever met. And because quarterback is the position that it is, it's so hard to get, like, a little bit of that out of him, which is why I love talking to the offensive line. What's it been like with your teammates out here so far?
It's been cool, man. You know, camp's camp. You know, it's going to be a grind every day. For me, personally, coming in here, it's learning the playbook and the plays and everything, but most importantly, just learning to gel with whoever I'm going to be beside. You know, going from right to left. I mean, Nate Davis sometimes, then Roger, then going there with Dylan, then we're going there with Shandon. I mean, it's a revolving door with who I'm going to be beside. So as long as I can see it from, you know, the same set of eyes and be able to communicate with that person, regardless who they are, that's what I'm trying to do.
People know the term swing tackle. Ty Sambrailo is somebody who's done it over the course of his career. You've obviously done it in different spots. The transition from right to left, though, I don't think people necessarily understand what changes from your standpoint other than you're just next to a different person.
Right.
Can you kind of illustrate a little bit for the audience what makes that such a difficult transition for a player?
Yeah, so I mean, look at it in this context. You know, if you're a left-handed person in general, you go to the right side or you have to use your right hand, it's completely different. From a step standpoint, you know, if you're a left tackle, you kick a certain way, your timing on your punch is a certain way, the way you fit your hat, play side in certain plays is a certain way. When you go to the right, it's completely different. You know, on the left side, a lot of guys are left-hand punchers. Some people throw 2 hands. But when you go to the right, you'll watch some guys who go to the right initially, they'll be left-hand dominant on their punch, especially in pass pro. It's kind of you have to retune your mind. And you want to get to the same, like we say, swing tackle. You want to be comfortable both.
Right.
But in my opinion, it takes a lot of time.
No, without question. How could it not?
Exactly.
I guess is the better way to say it.
Exactly.
Titans tackle Kendall Lamm here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So you come in as a free agent to this Titans team. There's opportunity at right tackle. They draft Dylan Radins in the 2nd round. What's been the dynamic between you two on this team as you kind of figure out, as the team kind of figures out what puts them in the best position to succeed?
Yeah, so I mean, Dylan's a phenomenal dude. Very bright young man. You know, played D1 AA, North Dakota State.
Right.
I was at Appalachian State, so we were D1 AA at one time. So I feel for him. I understand. I love the D1
There's
AA.
a brotherhood there.
100%. I mean, the playoff system, you know, we won't even get into that. I think it's great. But, you know, I appreciate D1 AA guys. But, you know, Dylan's a phenomenal guy. You know, I get in there. He's at guard sometimes. Even when he's at tackle and I'm sitting there watching, you know, you try to say little things. I mean, he got to play 1 year or 1 game of football his last year, so it's been a little bit of time for him. So if I can see little things to help him and, you know, just have that open form of communication, because in the grand scheme of things, like, think about it like this. We're on one team. Regardless of who goes in there, I mean, you want the best person. You want to put them in the best position. If it's me, if it's him, whoever it is, I mean, at the end of the day, we're on the same team. Let me reiterate that. So you just try to help as you can.
You know, it's such an admirable quality, and that's something that your predecessor, Dennis Kelly, who was one of the most phenomenal human beings that I've ever had the chance to cover. It's also the approach that he took with Isaiah Wilson, who was drafted and brought in with this Titans team last year to try and compete for that right tackle spot.
Right.
But it's not something that players across the board, that's not necessarily the approach. I remember Joe Flacco several times, whether it was Lamar or Jalen Hurts when he was in Philadelphia, kind of saying, it's not my job to help him come in here develop. We're competing for the same spot. Did you have an experience with a veteran player that took the time to kind of mentor you in the same way, that developed that, or was it just your general approach?
So for me, my first year in Houston, Dwayne Brown was there, Derek Newton was in our room, Ben Jones was in our room, DQ was also in our room. So, we were very, very close in Houston, very, very close. DB, he's my OG. I mean, everything that we would try to emulate him, but at the same time, you realize he's a freak. You can't do what he does.
Right.
But you try to pick little things. And, I mean, the room that we were in was so open, and so it was nice. That's what I know. Now, don't get me wrong. At the end of the day, we're competitors. You want to play, but at the same time, if we're really going to be a collective brotherhood, as we call it, I'm going to have to help the next man, because at the drop of a dime, as I've been in my career, something could happen, and you have to go in and you have to be ready. So if I can low-key help Dylan or anybody else get ready for that, I mean, that's called paying it forward, in my opinion.
Kendall Lamm, Titans tackle, is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Make sure you throw him a follow at Lambo_704, 2 M's in Lambo, if you want to follow him on social media. So this unit is a tight-knit group. Know Ben, obviously. By the way, the rumors about Ben throwing up on a football and hiking it back to the quarterback, can you confirm?
I may not have been there for it, but I wouldn't put it past him.
Were you guys as curious about his pregame barefoot routine as we are here? Because it's a fascination every time he walks out on the field. What the hell is Ben Jones doing shoeless in Green Bay in the snow?
Exactly, and I mean, it's dope. I mean, me knowing him for a long time now, it was cool to really understand and him explain that for me. But going out in the snow in Green Bay with it that cold and your feet feeling like that, I feel him if that's what he does, but I personally wouldn't have.
It just seems a little bit reckless. But Nate Davis, Taylor Lewan, Ty Sambrailo, Ben Jones, all these guys, how has it been kind of indoctrinating yourself into that group?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they're an established group. They've been together for a good amount of time. All of them have very well success in their careers. For me, and I got asked this question last week as well, I'm going to be Kendall. At the end of the day, I'm going to be me. I'm going to sit there, do my thing, my personality, say little things as it may. Not to say this, you're seeing a different side. I'm really quiet. Now, you'll say, really, because the interview I had last week, a lot of people would be like, there's no way.
Oh, listen, anytime any one of you guys shows an ounce of personality, we all swarm on it, we ruin it. It's the worst.
Right. But, I mean, when we're in the meeting room and certain things, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, going up to the line, I'm not to say my head's still going, kind of fast, but I'm still processing things. I'm still learning the offense in depth. And then when I get comfortable as time continues, more and more personality will come out. But, I mean, they have such an established room. I just try to, find my place and fit as I may.
Derrick Henry is the main attraction, one of the main attractions. You guys now have several here in Tennessee.
Right.
It's an offense that is loaded on paper. What I guess stands out about him as a player that you're going to have the opportunity to block for. You've obviously worked with great running backs over the course of your career, having been in your most recent stop in Cleveland. They have quite a collection of running backs and talent there as well. What is Derrick like through your experiences now through 7 days of practice?
I mean, he's just a specimen. I mean, you look at him, even when we played him when I was in Houston, the first time you see him, you're like, bro, that's literally a linebacker running the ball.
It's crazy.
We had a teammate, Bernardrick McKinney, in Houston, middle linebacker, and I promise you, Derrick's body frame, everything was BMAC.
Yeah.
So to see, someone that big who's that agile, once he gets his steam and gets moving, what he can do, it gets you excited. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, we're in a pass league now, as people say, and not many teams run the ball as much as the Titans do. So it's nice to know that we can put our hand in the dirt and we're blocking for the king, as people call him here. I know him as Derrick. The king will come. For me, of course, but, I mean, I still call him Derrick. But it's dope to know that you've got such a top-notch back behind you. So, yes, sir.
Kendall Lamm, offensive tackle, here with us on 104.5 The Zone, live at Titans training camp. So from the standpoint of this offense and what you guys are working through right now, we've now had 2 padded practices, fully padded practices for you guys. This is where we really start to see the separation between the offensive line, the defensive line, the tight ends, and the running game specifically.
Right.
What can we learn, and what have you guys learned as a group through these 2 days now that you're able to do a little more of what it is that you do?
Yeah, I mean, of course, with no pads and stuff on, you kind of slide off when you hit them, especially in pass pro, you touch them and you can't really grab. It's been 2 days, and we can actually fit. When I work certain, techniques with my tight ends, I can actually feel his fit I can actually see how that defensive end or if that Sam linebacker, how he's going to play, and then I can play off of it. You know, everything in our game is with speed. You want it to look crisp and smooth, but at the same time, it takes time to really rep that and to feel that. So in 2 days, you know, it's nice to sit there and get into certain combinations, double teams with various people and be like, okay, that's how it's going to feel with him. Okay, this is how it's going to look with him. And then you start to, you know, formulate and put that in your mind. So when you get to the line and you see who's beside you, you already know how it's going to go.
With that, I think that because people are not able to come to training camp this year because the facility here is obviously under construction, they don't get to see things kind of develop the way that we've been able to. Social media, you tweet things out and people take it through whatever context they will, with things like Tannehill's interceptions, for example, or the defense looked more dominant than the offense on day one of padded practice. I guess what counsel would you give fans who are looking at the analysis of their team right now about your side of the ball? Because I think traditionally the theme is always defense comes in a little bit ahead of the offense during training camp at this time.
I mean, this is training camp. Like, let me reiterate that for everybody. This is training camp.
A little louder for the people.
Training camp.
Thank you, sir.
You know, it takes time to, like, when you see on Sundays, and especially as we get rolling in the season, it's a fine old machine. But how do you think a lot of things in life, like when you first learned your skill that you work every single day, it took you time to get to the point where you can shut your eyes and do something.
Yeah.
We're in the infant steps here. You know, this is training camp. This is the second day with pads on. It takes time. And training camp in general, for people who don't really know, it's going to be a back and forth no matter what. I mean, some days offense is going to come out look good. Some days defense. It's a tug of war. Like, that's what this is. I mean, to get to where you want to go, you want it that way. You don't want one side to dominate. You want it to be an up and down, you know, graph. Like, that's what you want. And I mean, that's what you should expect. So if people sit there and panic on certain things, I mean, don't you want the defense to make certain plays? Don't you want the offense to make certain plays?
Sure as hell here in Tennessee they do.
Exactly. So it's like, I mean, that's just what it's going to be. It's training camp. Let me reiterate, training camp.
Training camp. At Lambo_704 is where you can follow Kendall Lamm, Titans offensive lineman, kind enough to give us some of his time here at the desk. I appreciate you, boss, for hanging out.
Yes, sir.
I will release you so you can get on with your Zen time or
100%.
whatever it is that's going to happen after practice. But it's been a pleasure to meet you. It's lovely to be able to do these things face to face.
Same for you. Take care, brother.
All right, we will continue the conversation. If you would like to weigh in, 615-737-1045 is the number. 615-737-1045. Titans head coach Mike Vrabel is at the podium right now. We will go to that press conference live.
Great effort, great finish, all that stuff. Compete. You know, we just have to be smarter than that. I mean, the ball's in the air, the receiver's up in the air. Just put his shoulder into the guy. I mean, he saw the unfortunate situation yesterday in Carolina. And I get it to a certain degree. I do. You know, I get it that guys are, you know, I mean, this is their livelihood, man. These guys are trying to make this team and trying to find a role for themselves and stand out. And then it's just very important and very critical that a part of that we learn how to practice. We have to come out here. We have to practice against each other and compete. You know, stay away from the quarterback. You know, I mean, we're not cutting anybody. We're not, you know, taking any cheap shots on anybody. So, you know, Brady's a young player. Hopefully, he can learn from it, and we can learn from not getting anybody injured, and we can move on.
Why are you so animated today at practice? Very vocal, perhaps colorful, maybe. I mean, basically just yelling at everybody today. Why exactly?
I thought that'd be like a normal day.
I thought it was a little bit more than normal.
You don't come very often, Jared. We know that. You are. I know, but in the past, you haven't been here as much. We needed to have some energy. We needed to follow up what we did yesterday with some more energy, and you know, just trying to provide that. And you know, we didn't script anything today. We got both teams on the side and a lot of moving parts, a lot of guys down. Offensive line, very, very thin, and we have games and we have weeks like that, right? We can go back into the 3 years that we've been together here. You know, things happen during the season. The preseason's chaotic. You know, just trying to work the operation. You know, you're going to go in there in the third quarter and field goal block, and this lines up this time. This guy's in for this guy and this defense, and so I thought it was a good opportunity for us to get some of that work in, and I would say that it was more positive than negative, and we moved in the right direction today after what I didn't think was a very good effort on our part yesterday.
Now
Now that you've had 2 days with pads on, how can you assess, your guys up front in the trenches?
I mean, I think the defensive line is been a really good group for us. It's been a group that's had full numbers. When we come to camp, we have a breakdown of what we think that we need, and John and I went heavy on the roster at offensive line because we knew we had some guys that were working their way back. Taylor and Ty. But then we also knew that we had some veterans in Roger and Ben that were going to need some days, and unfortunately, that's the group that's kind of gotten hit the worst and hit the hardest. So, I think that they're battling. I do. I think there's been some really good efforts up front. I thought that half line run and pass drill was a good drill. I think that's the way we need to start practice, or start our day or start our game, with those base fundamentals.
Could you describe the energy that Taylor Lamm brings out there when he's in the lineup, and what was that like missing that for a long time last year?
I mean, obviously Taylor's a large part of what we're doing here, and he does have some energy and some excitement. I do feel like he's been able to harness that for the good, and not do some of those things that would hurt the team, and try to learn from some of those. And he's been locked in, and he's done everything that we've asked him to do, in his return. And he wants to add more to it. He wants to do more, so that's positive. What we ask him to do is individuals, one-on-ones, work and conditioning, and he's done all that. And so, hopefully we can progress here to the next step and kind of see where that goes.
If he's harnessed properly, as you say, what can that energy bring to you, whether it's the huddle or the...
Well, I mean, we need him to block his guy and not let his guy make the play. But he has a personality, and we want him to let that personality out and be excitable and have fun, and help us move the football, help us score. Right? I'm not trying to take anything away from his personality, and I enjoy it, and we have a really good relationship. But
some patience. You talk about him wanting to do more. What's that process like when you got a player wanting to do more? You obviously got his best interest in mind with the trainers. How do you work through that?
Well, I mean, it's a conversation between the doctors, the trainer, and myself, and what we're trying to do, and what he needs, and where he's at physically, and we're going to have to start incorporating him into, he's doing the jog throughs, which are good, and we'll see, where that leads to. Does it lead to more one-on-ones? Does it lead to some reps in a team period? I don't know, but as long as we're all on the same page, I think that's what's most important.
What have you seen out of Dylan the first couple days of pads?
I think it needs to be better. It needs to be better. It's a young player up front and playing right tackle, playing right guard, playing all over the place because guys are down. We need to, start continuing to make some progress. I think the consistency has been what's been lacking. See a really good play and then, see a mistake that maybe we've made, or he's made previously, and that we've tried to correct, and he needs to correct that like every player does, so that we're not, making those same mistakes 2 and 3 times. That's most important.
In the period, and you run it sometimes where defenders are covering, but you don't throw. Can you talk through what you're doing there and why the throw part is important? Well,
it's about a progression, and Ryan's had a lot of throws, and we were using a quarterback down there, and to me it's more about the receivers in this particular drill. I think that you're talking or referencing was a bunch drill, just trying to get guys to come out of the bunch, whatever route concept we have, defensively, how they're going to handle that, and that to me is the most important, as opposed to worrying about a catch and a 2-stripe finish, and just being conscious of, their legs. To me, the most important part of that was not picking ourselves on defense and make sure that we have our good spacing on offense. And, we're going to trust Ryan to progress through. And sometimes that's even better, than sitting there and throwing the ball, that he can progress and see who's open. And I think we can go and learn from it on tape and watch it. I didn't have a chance to watch it. I was at the other drill, but, hopefully we got something out of that today.
You talked about Sam Brilo eventually returning as an option at right tackle. Kendall has not been at right tackle since really the beginning of camp. Why practice him on the left side, and how comfortable would you feel about him on the right side?
Yeah, we'd feel very comfortable. I think that, what we've tried to do is put the best 5 guys out there, and with this camp, with Taylor, with where he's at now, that's been Quiz and Lamb. And Kendall's going to have an opportunity to compete at right tackle. He will. So will Ty. I've told him that. And Quiz has done a nice job. He's battled, and I think he's a better player now than when he got here. So, we're trying to work all those guys in and just try to find the best group for where we're at right now in practice.
How much does the trust factor from what you saw from Quessenberry last year when pressed into action maybe help him in that competition?
Well, we trust all of them or they wouldn't be here. I think that Quiz took advantage of opportunities. He knew what to do. I thought he finished. I thought, it wasn't perfect. He got beat some, but, he was battling and he was competing. And, that's all we could ask of him. And, we love Quiz and obviously going to give him an opportunity to try to help us.
How much did you like the practice squad rules last year? And would you like to see that sort of become a permanent thing in terms of being able to manage your roster that way?
I think what we've always tried to do is just figure out whatever the rules are and play by them and operate by them. And if it's 16, it's 16. If it's 8, we'll have 8. We didn't have many guys to keep. We had some quarantine guys, the extra snapper, punter, and all that other stuff last year. We talked about the quarterback earlier, but we'll see, and we'll see going forward. We're planning on 16 obviously this year, and how many of those guys we need to keep away, and then if we can find some guys that we feel like can help us if they have to go in the game on Sunday, and then how we feel like we need to practice, and if we need extra linemen or whatever we need.
How is Shane working out so far in his more involved role?
Good. I think there's been energy over there. We've turned the ball over, haven't had many mental errors. Very early. But from what I could tell today with the unscripted stuff, I think that there wasn't guys running around with a late call or anything like that. We wanted to keep it, purposely fundamental and basic. So let these guys go out there and play. Nobody was trying to scheme anybody. I wanted to be conscious of that. So good. Just like Todd has been and, everybody else. But we got to keep moving. We got to keep pushing ahead everybody and try to hold everybody accountable.
The 3 guys you have returning punts, sometimes 5. Chester's got by far the most experience in the league. How much does that give him a head up? Well,
experience is good, but also production and the ability to make good decisions and to catch it and show that they're clean and all those that we track and film every punt that they catch. And he has had experience, and so, they're all working for that role. They all get a chance in preseason to return them against, some live coverage teams.
You feel pretty certain it'll wind up being one of those 3 guys?
Well, that's who we have catching right now, and then until somebody else comes in that can, show that it's certainly not going to be Big John. We gave him a chance the other day. He dropped it, so he lost his opportunity.
Your weekend to camp, what are some things that maybe have stood out so far, and what are some other things that you're not pleased with that you need to see improvement on?
Jim, I'm not going to give us a State of the Union after 1 week, man. We just got to keep getting better. We've got some work in the red zone. We've had some third down. We'll continue to add 2-minute. Today was a good day, step in the right direction, not having a script. But, I'm not going to be ready to evaluate, the roster and whatever, wherever we're at right now.
Where does teaching fall within the responsibility of a play caller or a coordinator versus the other things that they're responsible for?
I hope that we're all great teachers, whether we're the head coach, the head athletic trainer, the strength coach, offensive assistant, whatever that may be. Like, we have to find ways to teach, be creative, to help our players learn best. They all learn differently, and I think it's always the combination of how much time do you give them with the position coach, how much time are you in the unit, how much time are we in a squad, and so I try to fill in the gaps of where they're at when I have a squad meeting that, that 25 or 30 minutes is about teaching, is about the penalties and how they're calling something, or the situation, or what I see around the league, or the effort and the finish, the fundamentals that we're playing with. And then, the coordinator's got to do his job and fill in those gaps, and then it trickles down to the position coach. And then ultimately, the player's responsibility to take that information out onto the field.
How confident are you in Christian Fulton's ability to take on a much bigger role this year, given all the changes in that unit?
Yeah, he's been out there, he's been working, and confident in Christian. Just continue to work on his consistency. You saw him. The one thing was cool. He got beat. Josh caught a pass on him early in camp, and he came back with the same route and was able to stay square and not back up, and he got an interception on it the second time around. So those are positive things that when you make a mistake, that you come back and you recognize it and you learn from it. And he took advantage of the same coverage and the same route and made a play.
Your backs, especially Darrington, are taking advantage of the extra reps with Derek, being slow go early on.
Yeah, I think so. Mackay, all those guys. The fullbacks, there's good competition. Darrington, we got Jeremy back, and Brian obviously has played in this league too. So it's a good group. It's a group that's been available each and every day, and I would say that every day one of those or a few of those players have done something that has stood out. I think Josh was a pro. I think he learned a lot in the spring and a lot of the transition to the offense and really camp. And he's working hard to get back. And, when he's ready to get back, we'll put him back out there and hopefully he can pick up, where he left off. Because like I said, he was doing some good things. Who's that?
Josh.
I don't even know what you're referencing.
How is Julio doing? Any concern with him?
You know what? We're going to be probably cautious with Julio. So the Julio watch, will continue. We'll have a plan for him, but I would anticipate, that he would be, that we would be all on the same page, by the time the season started. You're going to see him out there at times. You're going to see him on the other field, and so he's played a lot of games, and that's kind of where we're going to be each and every day. So we can kind of all be on the same page, and I won't have to address it every day.
That's Titans head coach Mike Vrabel live at the podium. Julio Watch continues. We'll come back and react to it. Taylor Lewan will be at the podium as well. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
This is where the Titans play. 104.5 The Zone.
Hi, I'm Ryan Kelly with thehomeloanexpert.com. Home values all around the nation are skyrocketing. Just take a look and see what some of the houses in your neighborhood are
currently awaiting Taylor Lewan to make his way to the podium. It's been a minute for the Titans left tackle. We've done it once with the Boss Hog suit. Not again since the PED suspension. So anytime Lewan is at the podium, it tends to be something. So we'll find out what the latest is from number 77 here in just a second. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved with the action. 615-737-1045. Ty Sambrailo just faked everybody out because he walked out here. Look on the face of the media was so funny. Oh, that's got to be a bad feeling. Not a great one. But you heard Mike Vrabel at his press conference just a moment ago talking about Dylan Radins. Now, it was fitting because we just had Kendall Lamm sit down at the desk with us. Dylan Radins in competition with Kendall Lamm for that right tackle spot. Sounds like Ty Sambrailo is as well, now that he has been cleared off the physically unable to perform list here in the last week or so. But Vrabel, fairly critical of Dylan Radins in that particular moment, just in terms of the consistency. Now, not overwhelming, not out here saying that he sucked and he needs to get better, but it looks like he's having difficulty stringing days together, working on the techniques that he's shown once he makes a mistake, and then ultimately they work to correct a mistake. Robbie Boren, PR director of the Titans, is up at the podium right now, so apparently they're giving direction about who may be next. So why don't, Lucas, we go to commercial break, we'll come back, we will see who's at the podium, and if not, we will talk Titans in the meantime. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
3 the Pro Way, taking you inside the transition from retired athlete to business. Get inside the business minds of Tennessee football legends Joey Kent and Kevin Dyson. 3 the Pro Way, every Monday morning at 8. Download now at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Taylor Lewan is at the podium right now, so we'll go to him, and then we'll be joined by Will Compton later in the hour.
But at the end of the day, you can't rely on your past successes. Every year is a new year, and that's you got to keep the momentum going and keep building off that. We know we can do it, but it doesn't mean we're gonna do it. We have to start working towards that, and we've been doing that in camp. And it's early, but these guys, we know what our goal is, and we know what we want to accomplish. And I think that no one's taking anything for granted. No one just says, "Oh, we're going to walk out there week one and roll over the car." That's not how this game works. You start getting comfortable. That's when you start getting bashed in, and the Cardinals are very capable of doing that.
Taylor, you mentioned all the ebbs and flows you had, physically and emotionally going through the rehab and whatnot. What kind of got you through that? Like, what did you lean into to kind of keep you maybe?
There's a lot of things that I did. It's kind of when you don't really have a choice when it comes to an injury. You're either, there's days you get out of wake up and you really don't want to do anything. It sucks. Getting out of bed sucks. You're in pain. Even when you're 3-4 months in, you're like, why the hell am I still feeling like this? And so, it's just kind of every day is a new day. You got to keep grinding forward. I had this book that I wrote in every single day of, what I want to accomplish, what I want to manifest, and then obviously what I'm grateful for. And those kind of things helps you reset. And there was definitely a lot of resetting because there was a lot of downs and but this up. It just feels great to be out here talking to you guys. I've been looking forward to even speaking to y'all, and that's a bit of a weird deal.
Last year you said you were going to cut out the
You're
penalties.
next. You're coming up next.
And you did. How
Yeah.
proud were you that you did, and how confident were you that you could have kept that together through 16 games?
Yeah. It's 5 games, no penalties, no sacks. With my track record, it could have turned around real fast. We could have gotten to game 6, and it could have been 3, you know what I'm saying? And now the fans are pissed, and, so it's just being cautious and being mindful and playing on that edge. I think it's really important. My game is high energy, bring it to them type of mentality and finish through the whistle. And sometimes there's some occupational hazards with the yellow flag, and it's just being aware of that and trying not to hurt your team. Let's do this. Yeah, you've been waiting.
I got 2 then.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. What are you seeing right now, from the sideline, from this offensive line? And has your role grown, changed at all in terms of mentoring, especially the younger guys?
Yeah, for a while now, my goal has been, I'm not going to be the guy that sits in front of the team and gives this elaborate speech about, 9 times out of 10 you're not going to beat these guys. Like, I'm not the miracle guy. You know what I'm saying? But if I can take a guy over to the side and help him out with a pass pro, how his punch looks, when to punch. Like, if you do it for a long enough time and have success that I've had, it's nice to help those guys. And so I don't know if it's developed anymore. I just appreciate doing it more because not being around sucks, man. It sucks watching games on the TV, and it's just nice to be here and be able to help these young guys like Dylan and Chandon and Cole, these guys that came in. And I remember being a rookie. It's tough. You're flying around everywhere. A guy like Keith's a high-energy coach. He demands the best out of us for good reason, and everyone's held to that standard. And so it can kind of get away from you sometimes. Like, you have all these things piling on top of you. You don't really know how we play or how we practice, and it's hard to. This is a hard place to practice at. These coaches expect a lot out of us, and so taking a guy over, helping him out, and realizing like you're going to get a barrage of things to focus on each practice. Like, take 1 or 2 things and go fix that. And then the next day, go fix the next thing. And so it's just chipping away. And so I don't know how much it's developed, but helping out is definitely, it's going to make this team better. And that's really the main goal, right?
How much has the relationship with you and Keith grown through your time?
It's gotten a lot better, man. It's gotten a whole lot better. I think there was some resistance from me in the beginning of our relationship. And, I went scratching and clawing the whole way. But I think, his standard and the way what he's held us to has shown a lot in the success that we've had. I hate saying that out loud, but he was right. And so I think I have a lot more of appreciation for Keith and what he demands out of us. It's allowed us to go out there and play the way we do as an offensive line. And there's a lot of things we can do better, but there's a consistency of everyone wants to get better every day. No one's coming out here and just going through the motions. Keith won't let that happen.
Why the initial resistance?
Hey, you go from a guy like Russ Grimm, who's just kind of, relaxed guy, chilling all the time, maybe has a beer at 9 a.m. kind of dude, relaxing. And then Keith's a high-strung dude, and you're like, it's just a big change. You know, I've never done a very good job with authority, and he's definitely an authoritative figure. And so that was a hard thing for me to handle. And, you know, that's just being as candid as possible. But, you know, I really appreciate Keith and what he's done for this team, and especially for this offensive line. We went from, you know, we were a pretty good offensive line when Keith got in, and now we have an opportunity to be a much better offensive line now.
From a size weight standpoint, what's the balance like in wanting to be big and sturdy, but also wanting to be lean and being able to be athletic and move well? And where are you?
It takes a lot to look this average, Jim. There's a lot that goes into it. Eating clean as possible, knowing what your weight's supposed to be at. I know where my comfort zone is. I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but you know, I have other attributes that help me out, and so, you know, it's a process. Keeping weight on for me is a process, and it can get difficult at times, but I'd rather have it this way than the other way around, where I can't lose a pound to save my life.
You lost playoff games in your career, but this year or last
year, great way
year,
to start that question.
Last year, the Ravens game, you didn't play. A lot of your teammates have talked about how much that game hurt them. For you to not be able to be out there in that game, how much did that loss hurt you?
I hurt a lot. I mean, that was the first football game I've ever been to in my life as a spectator. And it was just weird being there. You know, it was just weird watching the guys warm up and thinking I should be out there, and you're sitting with your family and kids, and it's like they're not paying attention. They're talking. I'm like, we need to be focused on this. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're almost like, guys, you need to focus up, you know, type of thing. It's kind of a weird deal. That was the first game I've ever been to in my life. I think college or NFL, like, as a spectator, and you know, all the games we lost hurt. Watching those things, a game like Cleveland where things just didn't seem like it was going right at all. You just sit in this chair, your legs up, you're doing your rehab while you're watching, and you're just wishing you can be out there to help out, you know? And so, yeah, it sucks. Losing sucks every single time.
Some of the guys have said that without you being out there, there's kind of not a lack, but a different energy. Mm-hmm. For you, is that something that you bring naturally? Is that something you make an effort to do? And where does that derive from?
It's just juice, man. It's like before coming out here practicing is never the most fun thing in the world, but games are awesome. Like, you got millions of people watching you, and you have an opportunity to put something on film that, you know, everyone around the league is going to judge you for. And I love playing football. I love, you know, taking a guy to the sidelines and throwing him to our sidelines and guys getting hyped up. I love when dudes are getting touchdowns, weird, stupid sellies. I'm all about it. So I don't know what that comes from. I think when I was in high school, I was like a nose tackle or like a D tackle. I was trash. And this kid, I put it on YouTube. I'm thinking I'm going to get a scholarship offer or something like that. And some kid posts that, like, you know, Taylor Lewan's never in shape. He goes hard once every 4 plays or something like that. Like, he was a teammate of mine. And I always remembered that. And I was like, I'm never going to let myself be the guy that can't finish because of a lack of something I can control. And that's, I think it's really important to be in shape and show that.
You mentioned last month earlier, a lot of high hopes for the fans for this team for this season. Mm-hmm. As a guy that's been around, as one of the leaders on this team, is that something you pay attention to, or you just go about your business?
Like the fans being excited?
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. I think there's a lot of opportunity here, but it's kind of, what can you do? You know, there's all this, we could do this, we could do that, but at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything until we do it. And so you have to temper those expectations and realize that we have to put these blocks down and move forward and get these preseason games done and get stuff cleaned up. And, you know, things aren't perfect. It's definitely not perfect out here right now, and not what we're capable of. And that's our goal, to be that week 1 and sustain that. I think that's been a thing, you know, being here in 14 and 15, there wasn't a lot of hope running around here, you know what I'm saying? There was guys in November planning their vacations and stuff like that, and you look around and you're like, holy, you know, this is a bit of a deal. And now to be able to experience that in 14 and now be here in 21, and, you know, we got names of people we didn't have before. We got dudes that are capable of being some of the best players in the NFL at their position, and, you know, that's awesome to talk about, and it's super cool in July and June, but, you know, August, it's like we got to put up or shut up now. It's like it's time to go. Good? Thanks, guys.
Titans left tackle Taylor Lewan there at the podium. Some interesting comments about his relationship and the growth of it with line coach Keith Carter. He was very transparent about the fact that they did not get along when Keith first got here after being coached by Russ Grimm. It was a little bit of a, in his own words, a little bit of a deal. It's ironic that Taylor is talking today, and we have Will Compton coming up next, because I heard that their charitable concert was a bit of a disaster logistically, so we look forward to grilling Will about that coming up next. But it was for a good cause. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. 615-737-1045. Day number 7 at Titans training camp in the books. They will have an off day tomorrow, which I'm sure everybody is looking forward to. I'm going to be back in studio tomorrow. I'm not going to know what to do with myself, Lucas. It's like we've gone through a trial separation, and now we're getting ready to unite under weird circumstances.
Yeah, how's it going to be when you walk in? Like, what's the vibe going to be like?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, it's not quite sexual tension is probably not the way to put it, but it's gonna be something. I don't know. We'll just have to play it by ear, see if we can figure out how to do this thing again. And I get to see Blaine and Mickey, which I'm excited about.
You need like an in-house Cumulus couples therapist.
I'm pretty sure that's what our boss is. 615-737-1045. So, telling comments, and we'll get into this. Well, Will Compton is going to join us up next, but Lucas, do you have the audio of Mike Vrabel talking about Dylan Radins yet, or is that something we should wait on? Okay, we'll wait on that, and we will have that conversation a little later on, because there was some really good stuff there from both Vrabel and from Lawan about the development of this offensive line and a unit that was underperforming to a degree until the last couple of years. You've seen them take great strides. I think the best thing that Keith Carter had on his resume, because he was under fire there for a while. He was under fire there for a while, but the way that he was able to patchwork this thing back together with Sambrailo and Quessenberry, and the way that they had a little bit of a shuffling deck at left guard with Roger Saffold needing to miss some time in the middle of games and trying to fight his way back out onto the field. But I think the biggest observation from Vrabel today was Dylan Radins and where he is at this point in his career.
I think it needs to be better. It needs to be better. As a young player up front and playing right tackle, playing right guard, playing all over the place because guys are down. We need to, start continuing to make some progress. I think the consistency has been what's been lacking. See a really good play and then see a mistake that maybe we've made, or he's made previously, and that we've tried to correct, and he needs to correct that like every player does, so that we're not, making those same mistakes 2 and 3 times. That's most important.
Titans head coach Mike Vrabel there at the podium talking about Dylan Radins. So it was fitting that we had Kendall Lamm on the show today, because, the way that things are trending and the work that somebody like Ola Adenyi was giving Dylan Radins today, it sounds like he's and still many weeks to go, and they'll work some of this stuff out during the preseason. And you, if you're a Titans fan, you hope to see the growth, the development, and the consistency that Mike Vrabel is referencing, how you kind of string together those days and improve upon the coaching points that you're receiving the day before. 615-737-1045. So Will Compton will join us coming up next. Now, we're not going to talk about any football, really, with Will, because I heard the concert last night was a success by some accounts and a logistical nightmare by others. But it was put on for a good cause, feeding Nashville. And they had Dale Earnhardt Jr. on Bussin' with the Boys today. So I'm sure he's got lots to say about that, given that the bus is, in fact, a Dale Jr. bus. A little bit of irony there for the boys on the podcast this morning. We will discuss that with Will Compton, and maybe we'll talk about a little football. We'll see. Coming up next, I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Wall-to-wall Titans training camp coverage happens here. Bam! This is your exclusive home
for Titans football.
104.5 The Zone.
Will Compton of Bussin' with the Boys. Great many things to talk to William about. I'm told he's trying to find his way into the Zoom. You know, you'd think after several weeks of this we would found some efficiency on this so far, but none yet. He continues to bog down the proceedings of the radio show. Lucas is just shaking his head in frustration if you're watching on Zone TV, which is great comedy now. But in the meantime, let's touch on some stuff that we just heard at the podium from Titans head coach Mike Vrabel. Some stuff that was said about Dylan Radins and where he is in his progress, in his consistency, his efforts to try and improve from day to day. This was the Titans head coach.
I think it needs to be better. It needs to be better as a young player up front and playing right tackle, playing right guard, playing all over the place because guys are down. We need to, start continuing to make some progress. I think the consistency has been what's been lacking. See a really good play and then, see a mistake that maybe we've made, or he's made previously and that we've tried to correct. And he needs to correct that like every player does so that we're not, making those same mistakes 2 and 3 times. That's most important.
That was Titans head coach talking about Dylan Radins and his progress so far at training camp. We'll get back to that discussion here in just a second because I can see that Will Compton is in the Zoom. I don't know that he's actually in the Zoom. Will, are you present?
Here.
Why are you hiding today? Why is your camera not on?
Because I'm driving and I don't need to be holding the phone and looking at you.
It's not like we don't do this at the same time every day. You don't have the presence of mind to not be in the car?
No, I just enjoy. I've gotten in a routine to be on the phone with you while I'm in the car. Because I'm always driving back from the gym.
I hope that we are able to. I hope that we provide a soothing presence in your life as you work yourself into game shape. So your boy was just at the podium, and we were talking about the Feeding Nashville concert last night. How'd it go?
It was incredible. It was a very good event. The artists were insane. The venue is beautiful, but they got to figure out the traffic and the parking a little bit.
Okay, so what happened? What do you mean, traffic and the parking?
Well, we sat in traffic, for up to upwards of like 2 hours to get in the spot.
You yourself sat in traffic. You didn't get helicoptered in.
Oh, dude, they had to. They had to wait for some people to continue to fill the seats so we could, because there were a couple artists that couldn't get in either.
Well, but
other than that, the event was insane, dude. I mean, I'm drawing a blank right now. The amphitheater, it was the first event played there, so
yeah, First Bank Amphitheater in Franklin.
Yeah, they're obviously going to get way better at it. But man, they're I don't know how to explain it. You're like in a mountain. It's cool. It's a cool vibe. But everybody was great. Like I said, the performances were top notch. Florida Georgia Line crushed it. Thomas Rhett crushed it. Russell Dickerson crushed it. Now I feel like I'm having to say everybody's name so I don't leave anybody out.
You better.
But it was unbelievable. It was unreal. A lot of money raised. I know they're still counting, but it was an awesome event.
All right, so Feeding Nashville is a cause that I've heard before because I remember going out to Nissan Stadium with Taylor and Taylon Lewan and the progress that they were starting to make with forgive me, I forget the half of Florida Georgia Line that Taylor and Taylon work with on Feeding Nashville. But I know this means something to all of you and something that Barstool wanted to put itself behind.
Yeah, the other half that you're referring to is Haley Hubbard, Tyler's wife.
Thank you.
Haley and Taylon both put on, started Feeding Nashville based on I was getting a little bit of education based on the insecurity of food that is in the city of Nashville. From the tornadoes that came through, from obviously COVID, power outages that we've had, everything the city of Nashville's endured. Taylon and Haley had an itch to start Feeding Nashville because of all that stuff. And what was the initial question? I'm trying to figure out what
I said. Why is it important for you? What do you mean? What's the initial question?
Oh, Barstool putting their name on it. Yeah, sponsoring it. I mean, Barstool wanted to put their name on it. The boys are clearly with Barstool. Talon and Taylor are married, and that's why we did it.
Oh dear God. Expert insight and analysis from Will Compton. I'm busting with the proud of yourself right now.
You described the why of feeding Nashville. Like the story is why you get involved with any of it. There was nothing inkling out of Busting with the Boys that wanted to visually like get in with feeding Nashville, other than the story and their representation of what they wanted to do. So when they wanted to throw a concert and put our brand behind it and boost it and raise money and do it for a good cause, of course we were on board with it. So there is your why, Buck.
That was such a better answer than the first one that you gave. See, I just got to poke you a little bit. It's like any one of these press conferences that we do. Bussin' with the Boys, new episodes available now wherever it is that you get your podcast. I learned better than from last week than to ask you about actual football questions, so I'm not going to ask you if you're employed yet or close to employment.
God.
Yeah, it was tough. What? I listened back to that. I never listened back. But I listened back to that to see how bad and awkward we were, and it's the worst interview that I've ever done.
I'm glad. I love that you checked the tape. That's really good. That shows that you're always up to improve and not think you've already made it.
I mean, everything about me reeks of needing improvement. So at that point, I think we're just going to have to roll with the punches. All right, so Dale Earnhardt Jr. is on the podcast today. Now, this is something that you guys have had in the bank. It was something that you've been working on for a long time. What was the pursuit of Dale Earnhardt Jr. like? Because I know that you were thirsty for him on social media in a way that was becoming a little bit embarrassing for you.
Yeah, maybe that's from the seat that you sit in because you scroll 24/7.
That's right, big boy.
But dude, getting Dale was, as you know, huge. He's the reason the bus exists. The dude is a legend in the NASCAR world. We have his 8 Budweiser theme all over our bus. So when we first started the pod, it was like, yo, who are people we should get on? And clearly you have the big fish like the Rogans and the people that are kind of like you feel like are untouchable. But Dale Jr. was one as well, since it's like, his race car's bus. And Dale and I hit it off back when I was on the Washington football team, because he's a huge Washington football team fan.
Right.
And we get into that story. But ever since we've gotten that bus to, I've always shot him some texts every now and then, like, hey, when can we get you to Nashville? Or, hey, he would say, like, when NASCAR might be in Nashville. So I would always circle up with dates, like, hey, do you think you'll have any availability? I know you're swamped, blah, blah, blah. And we finally got it to where when NASCAR had their race a couple months ago, we were trying to make it work then, but he was obviously swamped because he is like an equity partner in bringing that to Nashville. And so he was like, look, how about I just fly out to you guys one day and I just come from Bustin' with the Boys, no interruptions. We just hang, we have some beers, and we talk shop. And I was like, oh, that would be iconic. And so he flew in a couple weeks ago, and we had a conversation for over 2 hours. It was awesome, man. It's essentially, the way I describe it is pull up a lawn chair to a campfire, because Uncle Dale Jr. is dropping some incredible stories on his old man, on some of his ups and downs throughout his career, transitioning in a lot of ways, how we became friends, like just everything, man. And it was a good time.
That's the best you've sold one of these podcasts in the months that we've done this. You got to be kidding me.
I had to make up for the questions early. You got to forgive me. I was sitting in a sauna for like 45 minutes, and I was absolutely delusional by the time I got out of it. You texted me about like, hey, this is what we're leading into, and I'm sitting there like, what is he talking about? And I had to realize that we still had our segment.
What do you?
But
by the way,
dude, I just told you. Why, Buck. Do I need to go back and explain it again? I was sitting in a sauna, a hot box of over 200 degrees for 45 minutes, and I was getting delusional. So forgive me for not realizing that our segment was coming up. I tried getting it together. You came out of the gate swinging with some big, questions. That
the
were,
ones I
had
thought
to
you would
sit
want
and
to
think
talk
hard
about most, since you're trying to raise money for a good cause. That's me trying to help you.
Well, if you follow me on Twitter, you could have followed the entire time.
Oh, God.
at _Will Compton. Oh.
But anyway, with the boys available now this morning in podcast form. Dale Earnhardt Jr. The video podcast debuts on the boys' YouTube page at 6 p.m. tonight Central Time. If you are listening in God's time zone, subscribe, rate, and review wherever it is that you get your podcast. So I guess the significance of the bus obviously plays a big role in this, because when you say that it's a Dale Earnhardt Jr. bus, I don't think people necessarily, they know what the bus looks like. You know, we've talked about the Stooley Army before. I'm sure they could diagram it for you from every angle possible, because these people are obsessed. But explain a little more what the significance of the bus, when you say it's a Dale Earnhardt Jr. bus, explain what that means.
So again, this is another tough one, and I would have to Google, because I don't want NASCAR culture to come after me.
Okay.
But Dale drove a Budweiser. I believe he's like the representation of Chevy and Budweiser. But there's a Budweiser-themed car that he raced, number 8, and the bus is a replication of that car. And it's a bus that's been around. It's been through exorcisms. It's been through decades. Like, this thing has been through a war. And knowing we have that themed bus, knowing my relationship with Dale, it only made sense to get the icon of NASCAR on his own bus, because we are basically carrying the torch for this bus. And I know he's a collectibles guy too. He likes to find stuff that, whether it's his old cars, replicas, stuff that had any race car themes on. So I tried selling him the bus when he was in town. Fortunately, he didn't buy it.
What do you mean? You tried selling him the bus? The bus is the only reason you guys have a podcast.
Yeah, I know. I said, hey, I know you probably have a want for this thing. What's the price? Like, everything has a price.
You're kidding me.
But no, that is what I mean by Dale Earnhardt Jr. themed bus. Like, it's his. You know what I'm saying? You can probably do a better job. Again, the sauna. I'm blaming the sauna.
Okay, it's not like you were tripping shrooms and hallucinating a Joshua tree. It was a sauna. What are you talking about?
Have you ever sat in a sauna? Have you ever sat in a sauna, Buck?
I go 3 days a week and sit in the infrared sauna. No, not for 45 minutes, for like 15.
The infrared sauna. That's good for you on a cellular level, inflammation, everything else. But an infrared sauna only gets up to 140 tops, and you're sitting in it for 45 minutes to an hour. So yeah, I guess you were sitting in a sauna for an hour. But you're not sitting in heat north of 200 degrees.
No, it's 15 minutes. That's about all I'm good for, is 15 minutes. I'm not doing 45 minutes in the sauna. I can't. I want to live. I choose life.
God, it's 15 minutes in an infrared sauna oh, Jesus. It's like get in the kiddie pool instead of jumping off the diving board.
Oh, well, it will not surprise you to know that I can't swim, so both the kiddie pool and the diving board are off limits. Will Compton of Bussin' with the Boys here with us on 104.5 The Zone. So you said that Earnhardt was on your list of like major gets, and you brought up Joe Rogan. So is there, I know because you had to do the solo podcast and you excelled at that, despite my rooting against you, because that means that anybody.
It was painful for you to just say right there. Oh, you excelled, which, I don't want to, oh my gosh, the pain is pouring out of your pores, dude.
No, I think that was as close to a compliment as I've given you in quite some time. I can't just give it to you. That's not how this works.
Yeah, no, true.
So,
anyway, continue. Sorry for the interruption.
It's okay. What does Taylor do? He did it to me a bunch the one time I came on the bus with. Oops. Drives me crazy. Oops. No, I interrupted you on purpose because you're telling a story about duck gangbangs, but we'll save that for another day. On the Bussin' with the Boys, Mount Busmore, I believe it was called. You rattled off some of your favorite interviews, but guys or gals that you haven't gotten yet, who you won on the bus. Joe Rogan was one name. Who are your top 3 that you're trying to nail down?
Oh man, that is such a good question. I feel like it changes all the time. In the football world, I think you look at Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski. We've been trying to reel in. We just missed opportunities when he's been in Nashville. But man, like legends, like not that they're not legends. Of course they're legends. But outside of the realm of football, Joe Rogan, I think Dave Chappelle would be incredible.
Yes.
And
well, they're both going to be in Nashville. You know that. They're both playing Bridgestone together.
Yeah, I tried. Don't worry, I tried. Listen, that's just a different world, bro. I don't know if Joe has been on anybody else's podcast in a while, like in a very, very long time, because clearly he drops like 3 to 5 a week, I believe.
This makes me think of celebrity softball when we were playing for Terry Bradshaw, and you approached Terry Bradshaw about the bus, and he said, "No, son, I don't do podcasts." That's what this makes me think of.
Yeah. He's like, "What's the bus?" I said, "Oh, it's a podcast." I said, "Oh, no, I don't do podcasts. I don't do podcasts." Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. I would have to go back to the draw. I know Rogan and Chappelle for sure. Dale was on that list because I wanted him to actually be on the bus, and I wanted to drink a beer with him while he did that, which we got to accomplish. But yeah, man, I don't know. I'll have to get back to you.
All right. Once he's relapsed from sauna brain that he seems to be experiencing, we'll get Will Compton's more clear thoughts, presented, of course, by All American Pest Control. Plans as low as $39. Visit yuckbugs.com. They present Will Compton's appearance with us each and every week. So to that end, explain to me. This may be a difficult question for you too, given that you're clearly in an altered state of mind. Have been fairly useless today, but with Joe Rogan, explain to me the obsession. Now, I don't know if you particularly are obsessed, but you and Taylor clearly have guys and girls that you model your game off of when you're doing this. Rogan pops up a lot when I listen to the bus and how you guys talk about him, and you're not alone, right? There's millions of people that hold Joe Rogan in this point of reference, something that I've never really been able to understand. Why is he such a draw?
That is another phenomenal question by the old Buck Reising, brought to you by All American Pest Control. Joe for me was one of the more indirect influences that I've had throughout the course of all of playing football, all of asking questions, trying to ask good questions, never being so strong in one stance that you can't empathize or try and put yourself on the other side of the fence. And I think he does a very good job asking tough questions, and whether or not he believes in it, he flips to the other side and asks very empathetic questions toward the other side that might have a different reasoning for why they operate that way. I think he does a very good job at staying balanced with everything. And I think his perspective on life and not taking shit so seriously, pardon my French, but not taking things so seriously is what I've always been drawn to, because he seems to have this freedom about himself that I'm always interested in with everybody. I'm actually in the middle of listening to his episode with Naval Ravikant, and they're actually talking about this guy's this big philosopher. He was an angel investor. He's big into tech and Silicon Valley, and he's had a lot of reflection and has a book that I'm going to dive into. But Joe's like, okay, well, what is the meaning of life? Because this guy seems to have so many good answers. And Naval sits there and he basically says, I think asking that question and the curiosity behind the question is more important than the answer. And I think the way Joe is able to drive out certain conversation and have depth, no matter who is sitting across from him, right. You see everybody get up in arms in politics, trying to dive in that area right now in this conversation. But, people might shout that he's right or left or this and that, but when he sits there and has good conversations with likes of Bernie Sanders and then somebody on the far other end of the spectrum, and his ability to go back and forth and kind of live in the middle and ask good questions without losing his temper or losing his cool, I think is a reason I'm drawn to him, because I respect that perspective that he has, and I respect that kind of freedom that he lives with.
So that's the best answer that you've given all day. You did it while cursing and sending Lucas scurrying across the studio to make sure that it didn't go out over the air.
You and Lawan both today, Will.
Yeah, but Lawan did it at a press conference. This one we have more control over. And then while describing this great philosopher that is on with Joe Rogan, you called it Silicon Valley as opposed to Silicon Valley. You just made it a valley of breast implants.
And I think that's the best part, man. It's sometimes everyone knows I don't do great with words, but I love how everyone knows I just wear it and just say whatever comes out.
God bless you for it. It's what makes great radio. I don't know if what we did was just great radio, but it's Will Compton. The podcast is, of course, Bussin' with the Boys. Subscribe, rate, review wherever it is that you get your podcast. The video YouTube episode with Dale Earnhardt Jr. premieres tonight at 6 p.m. Central Time. Don't miss it. William, I don't know what you were, but you were here today. Thank you for that.
I think there was such good and bad that you just came up with, I don't know what you were, but you just were.
Thank God I'm a pro, because otherwise this would have been a train wreck. Get the hell out of my Zoom.
See you, boss.
Will Compton of Bussin' with the Boys for his weekly appearance presented by All American Pest Control. All right, we come back. We wrap up the show. There's been news from Rocky Top, Lucas. There are actual volunteers on a practice field that we will touch on the other side. Polls, of course, as well. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Inside and outside the locker room, we got you covered with the best Titans training camp coverage.
Your home for Titans football.
And flagship for Titans Radio. 104.5 The Zone.
Are you a veteran with a VA home loan? Please
Field for a day or so before we come back out here on Friday and through the weekend. There's a preseason. Wait, is there a preseason game this week? Is the Hall of Fame game this week?
Yeah, Hall of Fame game's tomorrow.
Oh, my God. Football. Just like that. Things you love to see. We'll do the poll questions here in just a moment. I'll be back in studio tomorrow. We will have Madison Blevins, our friend from WBIR in Knoxville, because there is a lot going on with the Tennessee Volunteers. In fact, their first padded practice, taking place today in Knoxville. Lucas, what caught your attention from all that was streaming out of Knoxville today?
Joe Milton is big. He's a very large man.
But he's not good.
Well, he wasn't good last year, no. And there's a lot of factors there as far as a thumb injury where he had surgery in the offseason. Name one college quarterback that Jim Harbaugh has had success with at Michigan. You can't. That's the answer. So there's a lot of factors there. But you're right. His play dropped off significantly in Michigan. He never – I don't know that he really used his size fully to his advantage last year, but he's 6'5", 245 pounds. He's the biggest quarterback in the SEC if he gets the starting role. This was from Adam Sparks, now of the Knoxville News Sentinel, which
I love.
I love it. There's some great reporters in Knoxville. We love Mike Wilson, our friend Madison Blevins, but just adding Adam Sparks to that bunch just is awesome. He said, if and when QB Joe Milton carries the ball around the end for the Vols, a cornerback will make a business decision. For now, he's got to win the job.
Well, which can be a part of their game, right? You're just trying to diversify the offense and make up for a talent disparity that they may have on the field. I'm fascinated to see how they go back about it. And I was listening to the YouTube live stream from VolQuest of the offensive coordinator's press conference yesterday. Lucas, remind me his name.
Alex Golish.
And I was trying to catch up on, really learn the staff under Josh Heupel. I almost said Jeremy Pruitt. I've got PTSD, so I'm trying to shake myself with that. But I'm trying to catch up on everything that's happening in Knoxville and listening to the offensive coordinator yesterday. Really, the quarterbacks and the running back depth is probably the biggest question that people continue to have, understanding that there's going to be significantly new parts at both of those instrumental positions. And the defense, everybody's just kind of like holding their nose, it feels like, trying to get through this season until they can get a more solid foundation recruiting base underneath them. But in the meantime, there will be many more practices. And we'll talk about that with Madison Blevins tomorrow, who I look forward to hearing, if not seeing, via Zoom. But I'm sure she'll join us in person so she can harass me publicly.
Some quick practice notes from Adam Sparks. He said former four-star athlete Cayman Marley was at wide receiver rather than defensive back today. And Josh Heupel said there were no position changes at his press conference yesterday. But that happened today. And Cade Mays lined up at right tackle. You may see him in a few different spots along the offensive line, but today at tackle.
Well, he played a good deal of tackle this offseason, played a good deal of guard as well.
Yeah, and at Georgia, he was largely a tackle.
Positional versatility is something that they have in Cade Mays. So it's, he's clearly one of the best five that they have. It's just a matter of where he fits to best utilize the other four players alongside him at this point as they kind of shuffle the cards up front for the first time in a while. All right, polls.
Stop the count. Stop the count. The polls have closed and the votes have been tallied. Now, here's your favorite Buck Reising Show correspondent, Lucas Polzika.
Was Shane Bowen the fall guy for the Titans defense last year? Yes, no, or yes? I'm going to be honest. I have no idea why I put a second yes in this poll.
What are you doing?
I put two yeses and a no. I don't know. But 57% say yes. 18% say yes.
No. It doesn't matter now.
Say no.
It doesn't matter the results. This is why you can't be trusted.
No. I'm good for one mistake every poll.
Yeah, okay, but again, not from your Twitter account. This comes from my Twitter account. So people just think listen, they got plenty of reasons to think I'm hugely incompetent, but you don't help when you tweet out that kind of stuff from my account.
At this point, I think most people that listen to the show understand I run the polls on your account. Listen, I'm allowed a mistake every now and then, all right?
No, there's a fine system.
Who starts at right tackle for the Titans this season? Dylan Radins or Kendall Lamm? 69% nice say it is Radins.
69% nice would be wrong. at this point, I would imagine, again, early in camp, there is time for him to develop and find his footing. No pun intended, through the preseason, but I think that Kendall Lamm, it's probably going to be a Nate Davis, Jameel Douglas type situation from a couple of years ago, where you see the veteran in there for the first handful of games, be they, I think in the case of Jameel Douglas and Nate Davis, it was 3 weeks, maybe about a quarter of the way through 4, because week 3 was that awful Thursday night football game in Jacksonville where he got ragdolled, absolutely ragdolled, Jameel Douglas did, by Calais Campbell, and then Nate Davis came in, I think sometime in the first or second quarter against the Falcons the following week, because he just continued to be a liability inside.
Yeah, that's what Cousin Caden says. I think Lamb starts week 1, but Radens could easily move into the spot after that. J. Martin Ramon reply and say, your mom.
Very good.
Where will the Titans' defense improve the most this season? Mary Claire says pass rush, but also you can't get much worse than last year's third down defense, so maybe there.
Ding, ding, ding. We can have an expanded conversation about that tomorrow, but historically bad is historically bad for a reason. Like, they were wretched on third downs last year, so much so that they were the worst in the history of the sport since the merger. So not ideal. That would be the most obvious place that they would be able to find some improvement. They cannot be historically bad back-to-back years, especially with all the alleged upgrades that they've made, and upgrades that should be, for all intents and purposes, considered upgrades. So yeah, third down conversion percentage is the easiest answer there.
What's the better unit in 2021 for the Titans, offensive or defensive line? 80% say it's the offensive line.
Which maybe that will bear itself out, and maybe that's skewed by Derrick Henry, right? Because you got a 2,000-yard rusher behind you. You would assume that the unit in front of him is above average. And I think the Titans have an above-average offensive line. We'll see what happens with Lamb and Radens on the right side, and if Lawan and Saffold can continue, and really Ben Jones can continue to maintain their health. Nate Davis is a Pro Bowl caliber player at this point in his career, and I think that he's capable and did take substantial steps from year 1 to year 2 in his growth and development. But so far, it's the defensive line at camp, at least through 2 padded practices. That's a small sample size, but Tart, Danico Autry, Jeffrey Simmons, that 3 in particular. Be curious to see what the depth behind them looks like once we see more from Laurel Murchison and guys like that. But at this point, the defensive line is through 2 days, who I would say it looks like the superior group.
And lastly, we posed the question, what's the dumbest thing in sports this week? We went over most of the answers. I have one last-minute submission from the New York Post with this headline. What to consider when betting on NFL preseason games, with a link.
Oh, what, just the general principle of betting on preseason games?
Our friend Robert Mays from The Athletic, who we've had on the show before, says, you mean other than where your life went wrong?
Listen, I will be very much taking advantage. Well, actually, no, that's not true. I don't bet on NFL games because I feel like there's some journalistic principles that I'm violating as a Titans reporter by betting on NFL games. Everything else I'll bet.
If you're betting preseason games, you're an insane person.
No, if you're betting preseason games, it just means that you got a good promotion in your favorite sports betting app to bet the preseason games. And then, maybe you forget to put the needle down after preseason game number 1, and you just develop a preseason heroin addiction through, depth pieces. That got dark in a hurry. Fun show today. Check out the podcast if you missed any of it. Blaine and Mickey will continue to keep you entertained. Coming up next.
Jason Martin and Ramon Foster on J. Mart and Ramon. Tomorrow morning from 6 to